The first true test for the Nittany Lions comes this weekend as Penn State will be heading to California, knows how to party, tomorrow for a test against the USC Trojans that are unranked for some crazy AP poll reason. Sean Kane, Cory Lestochi will be here to break down the matchup and preview that. We have special guest Ron Redden coming on the show for the Big Ten Guest Pick'em. Jam-packed show. Let's get right into it. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Sean Kane. How you doing today, Sean?
I like that. I'm doing good. It is a hump day. I don't know if I told you this yet or not, Cory. I'm actually going out to Pittsburgh this weekend for a bachelor party.
No, I was not aware of that.
Yes, so
should have went out to L.A.
Yeah, if I could afford like a $2,000 trip right before a wedding, sure.
Right.
But yeah, I'll actually
all these checks from state media and management. You can't afford a trip out to L.A.
Could you believe that?
Huh.
If only we were being bankrolled by like Russians or something, like a lot of other podcasters were. But anyway.
Hey, we got a big show today. This is probably the biggest show of the season.
So far.
It's
the Homer Simpson, Bart Simpson thing. So far.
Yeah, that's right. Welcome in Christian Rosas, which is not Rojas, but Rosas. Welcome in on YouTube. And John, we got approximately 40 minutes to talk ball before Ron Redden joins the show. Ron Redden works for Bleacher Report now, used to work for SVP for a while as one of his, I think technically the title is producer, like not the producer, but one of the associate producers. Was helping me out with hardcore college football when we first started back in 2020. Friend of the pod. What hasn't been allowed or wasn't allowed, excuse me, to be on the show when he's with ESPN. And so now that he's moved over, I guess maybe Bleacher Report doesn't care. I'm not really sure. But anyhow.
That's interesting. ESPN doesn't allow that.
Yeah. Kent on YouTube says, this man has friends and family that must hate football to schedule these events at the worst time of the year. Yeah, they are aware of your wedding, etc.
Well, this was actually planned around the Penn State USC game. We're all big Penn State fans. I went to school with Mike, whose bachelor party it is. So we're all big Penn State fans. So we got that going for us.
Okay. So at least everyone will be occupied at the same time with at least something good.
Yep.
Sean, I have the most notes I've ever taken, I think, for any game. So we've got a lot of notes. I know that didn't really show up very well on the camera, but lots of notes. I got things squared and circled. And anyway, screen's not helping me out much here, but I'm prepared for today.
I'm prepped.
Maybe we start with practice notes for the sake of it. Biggest thing out of practice by far was we saw Anthony Dunca, right tackle, and Nick Singleton, running back, both practicing today on October 9th, which is a Wednesday. Good sign as far as both of them playing. James Franklin said in the presser afterwards he anticipates Anthony Dunca playing. So there you have it. Getting your offensive tackle Anthony Dunca back and obviously Nick Singleton back, very important too. Sean, what does that mean though, specifically with getting Anthony Dunca back?
Yeah, so one of the advantages that Penn State has in this matchup is on the offensive line, and USC really struggles stopping the run, especially. So I think having him back in that aspect definitely helps. They also don't do a very good job of getting after the quarterback in general. I think they only have 6 sacks on the season, and that's a big part of why Doc is playing over Nolan Rucci, who I think has done well when he's gotten in, but there is I think one of the things that I was most wrong about before the season was the gap between Donka and Rucci, because I think it is more significant than we knew going into the season. Part of that is we just had a small sample size with both of them. So opens up a lot in both the run and pass blocking. And then you couple that with Nick Singleton being back at practice, which is obviously highly encouraging and sounds pretty certain that at least Singleton will be back. And I fully expect Donka to be back as well, based on what we know.
Anthony Donka 330, Nolan Rucci 308, as far as weight is concerned.
Yep.
22 pounds is a big difference there. And I'd just like to say that I was the believer in Anthony Donka at the beginning of the season. I was on the Donka train, or should I call him the Donka truck? That sounds better.
Yep.
I like that better.
Yeah, and I think I gave Rucci a slight edge. I did think they both play, and they both have played somewhat, but Donka's getting a lot more of the share of the snaps than I think I anticipated. I thought it would be sort of like Big Slab versus Kane Wallace in 2022, where Wallace played most of the snaps, but Big Slab, a.k.a. Bryce Effner, got in quite a bit as well, even when Wallace wasn't injured.
I think the difference is in the pass blocking. I think Rucci holds his own in the run blocking, but I think the pass blocking is where they'll be happy to have Anthony Donka back. There a couple times we showed it on the podcast on Monday, where a couple instances where the pass rush or pass blocking broke down.
Yeah,
a little bit too quickly, and also against not that many pass rushers. Nick Singleton.
And one of them.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, one of them was against Donka too. But I think it was on the play he got hurt, and I think that's the only time I ever saw him get beat pass blocking. So,
what Nick Singleton coming back? We talked about this a little bit on Monday's show too. Huge for Penn State from the explosivity side of things. I've really subscribed to this belief in Bill Walsh, and the third down conversions aren't nearly as important as people like to say. I mean, it's not a bad statistic, but it's not a game-winning statistic in the sense of if you're good on first and second down, third down doesn't matter. And Nick Singleton is one of the best players in the country on first down. I think he, for a little bit there, was averaging almost 10.4 yards per touch, whether it was a catch or a run. And that's something that you can't really live without, especially on the road in a Big Ten environment with a USC team that we think Penn State's going to have to score some points in order to keep up with.
Yeah, playing the kind of style that we want to play as well. I think I've seen comps on Twitter and even came up here to playing Michigan style from last season. Well, Michigan was in third and manageable most of the time, or in second and manageable most of the time. They were big on just staying on schedule and being really good on first and second down. Now, the thing that we do have is Drew Aller. And Drew has been at, like, I think most of his best throws this season have been on that seam route over the middle with Tyler Ward. We even ran it with Liam Clifford, Amari Evans. So we have a lot of guys that are capable of doing that. And that's been one of our bread and butter plays. And that is a play that you could pick up big yardage on if you do, get stopped for a loss or only a minimal gains. So I guess my point is it all comes back to Drew Aller in the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, I thought one of the other things Franklin said tonight during his little huddle was you can't reinvent yourself in 1 week. And so they're going to stick to who their identity is. We had a question on the Monday show where, do you think Penn State sticks to the blueprint to beat USC? Well, I think there's your answer. Penn State is not going to come out and change who they are. And in this game specifically, after we saw what Minnesota did to USC, you kind of hope they wouldn't. It just seems like, Sean, the way that Nick Singleton and Katron Allen complement each other, you're just going to see them run the rock and see if they can kind of pound USC into submission. And I'm not saying they're going to play keep away, because they're going to want some explosive plays and they're going to probably take their shots. But I don't think this is one of those games where you're that upset if you're holding on to the football and you win time of possession and you keep the ball out of Miller Moss's hands and some of their big play potential.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, historically, well, you want to go ancient history, we were. But in Franklin's time here, we haven't been a huge time of possession team. Franklin loves the explosive play, still does, and we are much more explosive than we had been the past really couple seasons. But we really haven't had a time of possession team where we're just gonna keep the ball, keep away. But we're built to do that this season. And that's really been the issue for the past 10 years is we haven't had a team built to play that style. And, because we just weren't good enough up front for a big part of that. And we have a scheme right now with Danny Kotelnicki that allows us to do that. And I think that has to be the blueprint going out to USC, especially when you factor in you could run the ball on this team. They are not very good against the run. They're pretty good against pass. But they're not anything special against the run. And as was shown against Michigan and Minnesota, I mean, Michigan beat them with only throwing the ball. I think they only threw for about 40 yards. So they got it done almost exclusively on the ground, and we have a much better quarterback than anybody Michigan has.
No doubt about that. Just to give you the stats there, USC's defense, 109th in the country in yards per carry allowed, 4.96 yards per attempt. Not great there. Got a couple things. Bear Jew. Mighty Jew on YouTube says, smash the like button, people. Not an Inglourious Bastards reference there. Please go ahead and like the video and subscribe, whether you're subscribing on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Appreciate the reminder, Mighty Jew, because I don't think I hit that in the intro. Tim Reyes, which team has more pressure? I honestly believe it's USC. Whole season is on the line. Sean, I don't know if you watched Josh Pate last night, because you asked me about Josh Pate before the show started today. But Josh Pate did do his breakdown of USC Penn State. And one of the things he spoke about, though, was whoever loses this game, there's going to be questions asked of the coaching staff. Not a James Franklin versus top 25 matchup this week. And I already kind of went down my rabbit hole tangent last time, so I'm not going to do that again. But either way, people are going to question, and I love the way he put it. Penn State has struggled with Michigan and Ohio State in the last, call it 4 years. Is USC part of that group, or are they part of the others? And that is a pretty important part of this. And for USC, if they lose this game, they'll be 500. They'll have their third loss. Any hopes of a college football playoff is out the door. And you begin to wonder, is this thing going to turn around under Lincoln Riley? So huge implications for whoever loses this game. But Sean, who's under more pressure going into this thing?
I would say USC. You have to keep in mind they're coming off a year where they had a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and they only won 7 games. So you couple that with being on the verge of going 3-3, when you already have a loss to a lackluster Michigan team, who I think would be lucky to get to 8 wins, and a Minnesota team who kind of the same thing. I mean, they're a borderline bowl team, and you lost to both of them. So yeah, if you have a loss to Penn State, I think Lincoln Riley could be in some trouble. And we talked a little bit on last pod about how there seems to be a lot of tension with Lincoln Riley right now. He's a lot more combative with the press in a way that we haven't really. Even I think Franklin's been a little less patient with the press in the past couple of years. Like Lincoln Riley, it seems to be like a real butting of heads. And you had things like Bear Alexander transferring out midseason, so it's just a lot of bad vibes right now around the USC program that I don't think really are there for Penn State. Now, if we lose to USC, are people going to be mad? Yeah. But the season's also not over. You still have Ohio State on the schedule, and even if you lose to Ohio State, you still have a chance to play it off. So everything's not all over if Penn State were to lose, but a lot of mad people.
A lot of mad people. Margin for error, obviously, strengths as well. I think this is just a great opportunity for James Franklin to get a good win on the road. I'm trying to think of like when there'd have been another good one like that. I think 2017 at Iowa would have been a good example of that, but there's not a bunch of those, like maybe even 2021 at Wisconsin, kind of. But this is like a really big opportunity, probably since Iowa 2021, where you're going in with everything in front of you. Penn State was ranked 4th at the time in that game, and a chance to kind of separate yourself from just the good teams or even the above average teams, maybe even the great teams. You have a chance to separate yourself from them and at least get yourself in the category of near elite. I don't think if they win this game, we're going to say they're as good as Ohio State or Georgia, Alabama, but you definitely put yourself comfortably ahead of everybody else and what people think of you. And people begin to start taking you a little bit more seriously. We talked about it a little bit on the last episode. Penn State still has to prove themselves. And every single game, the way at which they win matters. And that's because nobody has faith in what Penn State can do. Winning this game begins to put some faith and confidence in what Penn State's capable of. And honestly, I think just as a Penn State fan base, you just need to see one go in, right? You need to see Penn State win a game. In this case, now I think the line's up to 5.5, which I think it started at 3. So it went from maybe a coin flip to Penn State is now favored decently, but you still want to see it go in, Sean. Like you're at the free throw line. You've missed a couple from the 3-point line, and you just need to settle down and make sure this ball goes in the hoop.
Yeah, and I mean, think of it this way. Besides Texas and Ohio State, and I think they're the 2 best teams. After that, it's all kind of jumbled. Like I was a big believer in Bama. And then you go and lose to Vanderbilt. And their defense, we were willing to say, well, they played Georgia, so they gave up a lot of points, but then they gave up 40+ to Vandy. So, I mean, what I'm saying is I don't know who the 3rd best team in the country is. And I'm not ready to say Penn State by any stretch, but it's very jumbled after Texas and Ohio State, in my opinion. So yeah, and you talked a little bit too about how big of an opportunity this would be, and what has been this, the negative storyline with this Penn State program in the past few years. It's been missed opportunities, and they've had a ton. I mean, going back to blowing the lead at Ohio State in 2017. So I'm not saying it would be on par to beating, I think Ohio State was the top 5 team at the time, but it would be a big step forward. It would be bigger than beating Auburn in 2022. I think of it in a similar vein to that, but that Auburn team really wasn't very good.
No.
But it was beating a brand name on the road, and in a game that a lot of people were picking against you.
It's probably a top 5 road win for Franklin.
Probably. Yep.
So Connor on YouTube says a complete game is what he's asking for. Sean, that was one thing that Corey Geiger, when he came on the show, harped on quite a bit. I don't think the offense is playing as incomplete as I think people are not giving them credit for. I think they just haven't had as many possessions to do it. Now, they have had some untimely 3-and-outs. But I guess my point is, Sean, does Penn State need to have a complete game in order to win this? Like, where are you at as far as perfection needing to walk away with a win out in the Coliseum?
I mean, they can't sleepwalk in the first quarter. I don't want to be going into the second quarter timeout break down 14-3.
Thankfully, USC doesn't necessarily start very fast either.
Which is true. Now, would I expect more in the first quarter from the home team on the West Coast or the visiting team? I'd probably expect more from USC. Wouldn't shock me if we were down like 7-3. I don't think that's that big of a deal, like going into the second quarter. But like we can't go out there and just look lethargic. or go out there, start and have the Trace McSorley 2 interceptions before you even really got off the bus.
Terrible.
Performance. Like you can't do that. And I don't
even Sean Clifford Iowa game, throwing a couple picks early there.
Yeah. Those were big plays. And they add up. So I think keeping away from the mistakes early is very important. Now, the good thing is, one of the best ways that you can avoid mistakes is run the ball. And we have the team to do that. And
run the damn ball.
And I think USC scheme, they do a lot of the T. Frank was pointing out on Blue White Illustrated pod that they do a lot of the too high safeties, which takes the deep ball away theoretically. But it does soften you up for the run, and that's one way that teams have beaten them this year. So,
I'd be very, very surprised how much they stay in that 2 safety shell. I don't think they are equipped to stop the running game with 2 high safeties. I just don't think they're going to be able to do it. That maybe they start and then they very quickly move a safety down into the box.
Well, that's the thing. They haven't played against an offense as balanced as ours yet this year. Like Penn State, if we played LSU on a neutral field, I'd be very, very confident we beat them. And that's same thing with Michigan, and we play Minnesota, and I'm expecting to beat them as well.
I wanted to share USC is 96th in turnover margin. -2 right now. Penn State's sitting there at +4. Not creating a lot of turnovers, partially due to the amount of man coverage being played, but still taking care of the football, which going on the road, Drew Aller has thrown 1 interception at this point. I think, honestly, more people probably thought he would have thrown a couple more by now, but it's showing that last year was not an anomaly. And Miller Moss has thrown 4 picks to his 9 touchdowns so far.
Right. And Miller Moss started the year very, very hot, has not played as well in the past few games. So that's something that if you're USC looking to pull the upset, you got to have more out of your quarterback. But they do have weapons. And the guy that we're going to have to really think about stopping is Woody Marks. He's kind of the safety valve in their offense. When things go bad, they go to him, both as a receiver and as a running back. I know crazy. Cory has a crazy stat about him.
Yeah. Thanks for teeing that up for me, Sean. Yeah. I have this in the ticker below as well, but I couldn't believe this. First of all, he has a catch in 50 straight games.
Man.
Secondly, that means it just shows you how long he's played. He's played for 5 years. Secondly, in his career at USC, 724 touches in his career via running or catching a football. 724, Sean. An insane amount. And he is a very good pass catcher, and he's going to be used. I would expect them to throw a couple screens here and there to slow down the pass rush. I would be surprised if he has less than 3 catches in this game.
Yes, I think that's going to be one of the ways that they're going to combat what we do. And one of the things Penn State has done a very good job at is pressuring the quarterback. We have to sack the quarterback more, but we do get a lot of pressures on him, on the quarterback. And one of USC's big flaws has been protecting the quarterback, really since Lincoln Riley has arrived at USC. And it is strange because there are a lot of Oklahoma linemen drafted when he was at Oklahoma, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't translated out west.
Sean. Yeah, I just, offensive line is usually the thing that lags behind the most, and I think they're just trying to build it back up. I think he's still probably a year or 2 away, but yeah, I wanted to drop those numbers as well. 51st in sacks allowed, 45th in tackles for loss allowed, and they are the offensive line is ranked above 100 in both pass blocking and run blocking, according to PFF.
Yeah. And when you're playing against Abdul Card or Zane Durant, Denai Dennis Sutton, yeah, you could be in for a tough afternoon when you look at what Penn State's able to do. And that's been our trademark, is being able to get after the quarterback.
What about the receivers, Sean? Because I guess where my concern is the passing. You mentioned Woody Marks, and he is averaging 5.8 yards per carry, but I'm nervous about these wide receivers. Um, Jacoby Lane, 21 catches, 230 yards, 4 touchdowns. But the guy you probably want to talk about the most, Zachary Brown, 21 catches, 227, no touchdowns yet. But he's a former 5-star wide receiver, the number 1 wide receiver in the 2023 class, and I think he was like 7th overall. Like, this is like one of the best players in the country in his class. Dangerous, Sean, just absolutely dangerous. I am a little nervous about what Penn State's plans are to stop him. T. Frank mentioned they played more zone against UCLA, and he thought in preparation for this game. I'm just curious, can Penn State limit the big plays and also get off the field on those third down situations, which they haven't done a great job of so far this year?
Yeah, that's the thing with playing this team. Even though, even though they do struggle with the line, they're gonna get their. One of the things about Lincoln Riley is he loves to get his guys the ball out in space, and he has been doing that for however long he's been a head coach, and then even before that as an offense coordinator under Bob Stoops and Zachariah Branch. They love to spread the ball around. They have 6 guys with more than 10 catches this year. So they love to get the ball out. And I think you mentioned screen plays. I think you may see some bubble screens. So yeah, the best way to combat a good pass rush with a mediocre to bad offensive line is to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quick. So, and that means getting it to guys that could run after you catch, like Zachariah Branch. And then, they have, it's just a lot of weapons that we're going to have to deal with. And a lot of guys, they can do different things. Deuce Robinson is 6'6", and he has 3 touchdowns on 10 catches on the season. So he's going to be a red zone threat for them.
Yeah, and he's averaging 14.7 yards per catch as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, they have a lot of guys that could hurt you. I wish we could take one.
No kidding.
Just one.
All that being said, Miller Moss is throwing 64.5% completion percentage. I mean, I guess I'm just curious how this all plays out. And by far, the more interesting matchup in this game is going to be USC's offense versus Penn State's defense. In a way, kind of reminds me of the 2008 Rose Bowl in the sense of everybody wanted to see Mark Sanchez and those groups of receivers against Penn State's defense that laid a complete egg that day. But nobody was talking about what was going on the other side of the ball and Penn State's offense and USC's defense that day. We transitioned over to that side. We talked about Nick Singleton and Anthony Dunca coming back. Drew Aller on the road was better at West Virginia. But how much do we need from Drew Aller besides taking care of the football? How much do we need him to make some big plays? And we talk about this a lot with him. How many times do we need him to win the game versus not lose the game? Is this one of those games where he needs to win the game, or do you think they can tote the rock and just, dink and dunk when they need to?
I don't think he'll have to necessarily win this one. I think we're going to be able to get it done on the ground. I think he's going to have to make throws. I mean, I'm not saying we could just whoop as my lamp falls. Yeah, I'm not saying that. I don't know. We could go full Army West Point here. Thank you. But I don't think it's
Sean, you have an assistant? We're paying you money for an assistant now?
Yes, my lovely fiance is my assistant that just saved my lamp. So
nice.
As it fell. But yeah, I mean, he's gonna have to basically do what I think he's done all season, and that's make plays when we need him and take care of the football. And I think he's more than capable of doing both of those things. And I think there are going to be games where we're going to need him to win us the game, but I don't necessarily think this is going to be one.
I saw on YouTube just a second ago from Connor. He said, got to be sharp on third down. I'm assuming he's talking about Drew Aller specifically. I didn't know this, Sean. Penn State is now 7th in the country on third down conversions. They are up to 52.83% on third down, which might be one of the best Penn State's had in a long time. USC is not far behind at number 12 in the country. Again, I don't put crazy amount of stock in that, but I will say top 15 teams include Miami, Penn State, Indiana, Arkansas, Texas, LSU, Ohio State, USC. So some really good teams in that kind of top spot there. But I would reckon that's the yards per third down needed is kind of the kicker there. Can you keep yourself in manageable situations? I'm also just curious, Sean, like, can they bust this thing open? Like, can they attack USC and get some explosive plays? And if they're able to get up by 10, 14 points, is there any way Penn State or USC is going to be able to crawl back into this one?
It's possible. And I think it's also possible USC could battle back. I think we all remember the Rose Bowl. Granted, totally different teams, totally different coaches, but when you play against a team with a good quarterback, with weapons, yeah, you can never count them out, for sure. And I think we do have, is there some Auburn 2022 potential here? Yeah, there is. I don't think it'll happen, but there's some, because we have such an advantage, I think, in the trenches. And that's still even 100 and how many years has college football been around? 125 plus years,
more
130
than
years,
closer to 150,
150,
over 150. It's like 154.
Yeah. It's still really about the big guys up front,
the big hog mollies,
and you win with the tip of the spear. And that is still true even in the spread offense era. That's where these games are won and they are lost. Look at Lincoln Riley's teams at Oklahoma. Whenever they get to the playoff, they get spanked. Because they were not as good up front. And that's kind of where, if you're Penn State, that's kind of where you want to win this one.
Speaking of that,
USC not going to tip
my
hand or anything, but
USC one guy over 300 pounds along the defensive line. That is something that James Franklin was actually asked about on the Monday press conference. And I think the one thing he said that's interesting there is, like, and this got even brought up on the Josh Pate show on Sunday, but there is a difference between having some guys in 290 range and some guys above 300. Like, weight does make a difference. And James Franklin harped on that when they lost to Michigan. And was that 2022?
Yeah.
Penn State's got a beefier up front situation on both offense and defense. USC, kind of where Penn State was a little bit ago. They got some work to do along that defensive line, especially now playing in the Big Ten. Wanted to mention linebacker Eric Gentry, 30 tackles on the year, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. Devon Tompkins, 1.5 sacks there. And also safety Akili Arnold, 6-year guy. I don't know how many 6-year guys are left. But he's one of the guys who's played a lot of ball for USC's defense there. Danton Lynn, their defensive coordinator, former Penn State cornerback, was at UCLA last year, now with USC. Other thoughts on USC, Sean, especially on their defense?
Yeah, Eric Gentry is the one guy that stood out to me. Also, I wanted to mention that he did get banged up. And they are contemplating him redshirting the rest of the year. So I'm not even positive he's going to play, but I think you have to assume that he will. And he was the one guy that stood out to me on this defense. Again, they do some things. They're definitely improved with Danton Lynn. If you want a problem solved, call a Penn State guy. That's just what we do. But like I said, they do some things well. With the things that they don't do well is sack the quarterback. They only have 6 sacks on the season. And if you're not able to rush the quarterback well, you're not really able to protect your quarterback. could be a tough day for you, Cory. Wouldn't you say?
I would say so. And yeah, someone on YouTube also confirmed that, quote, no final decision has been made. We're going to keep evaluating just how he's feeling and how he's progressing. In this day and age, I don't know if you can say one way or other right now. It's just the way the rules are. No official statement on what his injury is. He was carted off in that Wisconsin game out indefinitely. Shawn, if I had to go, last quote here I want to include. He's back with us, doing everything right now but the full practice, but he's already able to ramp up some of the physical activities, end quote. So that to me, I feel like I put that in between bumps and bruises and long-term injury.
Yeah,
like I think we're right in the middle
certain.
there. Like I don't think it's like he would be done for the whole year, but I would put it as doubtful we see him on Saturday at this point. Very doubtful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure we're preparing like he's playing as we should. But yeah, that wouldn't give me the warm and fuzzies if I was a Trojans fan.
Hold on a second. YouTube is checking us out. Some of these articles have come out 3 hours ago, still questioning what's going on. But I don't know how much we trust Reddit. But one person on Reddit posted 13 hours ago, 2 concussions in the last 4 games. I don't see anything from anybody, I guess, with better reputation as confirming he's out. But I would put it as very, very doubtful.
Well, if it's 2 concussions in the last 4 games, probably shouldn't play.
Yeah. No, probably not.
Yeah, that means you got to rest your head.
And I don't know if this is the game where you'd want to return.
No, I really wouldn't want Ione coming at a guy that has 2 concussions in the last month.
Not at all. Not at all. I just rubbed my eyes and I was making enchiladas. That's not a good idea. When I looked at their defense, there's some other guys. Mason Cobb is a guy who plays a lot for him. One of the best names ever. And Mascarenas Arnold will play a larger role as well then. But to me, I just don't see how they're not going to have to drop a second safety into the box and try to stop this run. And I'm very curious when or how Andy Kotelnicki decides to take his shots.
Yeah, I think it may be dependent on SC. Now, Kotelnicki in every game this year has taken shots. They've at least attempted them, and they've converted quite a bit of them. So it's going to come up, but whenever you play against a team like this and that likes to keep the 2 safeties back, that's obviously what they're trying to limit. But if we're gashing them on the ground and we're the team that goes up 2 scores early, well, then you're going to have to try to take that run away. And that'll have them doing something they're not comfortable doing. And that, my friends, is complementary football on the offensive side. You're running to set up the deep throw. And just something that we weren't able to see a whole lot of last season. And it's been a very refreshing change.
All right. Before we get Ron Redden on the show here, Mark on YouTube is saying a lot of times reporting him out. I don't see that anywhere specifically, that it's official, but I do think it's very, very, very doubtful. I wanted to mention just a couple more things. Their kicker, Michael Lance, 7 for 9 on the year. Did miss one from inside of 30 and also missed one inside of 50. I think it was like a 47-yarder-ish. But I also wanted to bring up punting. They got a good punter over there. Penn State's already struggled with starting field position so far this season because they haven't been able to get off the field as much as they'd like to. Curious how much that affects Penn State in this game if it becomes a rock fight, which I don't necessarily think it will be. But if Penn State has to nickel and dime it all the way down the field, are they going to be able to sustain those drives? Maybe not just once, but can they do it 2, 3, 4 times in order to win this football game? Something to kind of pay attention to if you see Penn State continuously backed up on their side of the field?
Yeah. Yeah. I know I feel a lot better about our special teams from just a week ago because I did not know if we had a functioning kicker. Because Sander just seemed, yeah, I think he's a little in his head right now. But then Ryan Barker came in, made 2 field goals, made all his extra points. So I definitely feel better than where we were. However, yeah, punt return still remains a concern. And we talked a little bit about Zion Tracy on Monday and how it's going to take a big play to get the block in the back out of a lot of our minds. I know out of me and Cory's minds because we're kind of nuts. And probably some of yours too, because if you're listening to us, you're probably also a little crazy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's going to be something that we're going to want to fix because it seems like the whole season we haven't been on the winning end of field position. And the thing is, it has really nothing to do with our punter because Riley Thompson has been fine this year. It's more so the punt return, not knowing when to let balls go, not getting enough out of the punt return, penalties. So just a bunch of and playing against good punters. I mean, even Penn State had a good punter.
And we love, and now that USC's in a Big Ten, it makes sense for them to have a good punter.
That's a prerequisite to join.
Shawn, any other thoughts you have on this before Ron hops on? He may hop on any second here. Just other things you're kind of looking for in this game. We didn't mention this on the episode on Monday, which we should have. Well, we did mention the don't jump off sides, but just in general, they did better with penalties. Is that something you're still kind of concerned with as we move into this game?
Yeah, no doubt. It was good to see them finally get that cleaned up on Saturday, but it's still in the back of your head. Maybe not the offsides as much, and knowing that we'll line up correctly. And I know it sounds very elementary to know where to line up, but it was something that a couple guys kept getting called for. But yeah, I do feel I feel a little bit better. But yeah, it'll always be in the back of your head, especially playing on the road. And something that I think if you're going to be concerned a little bit about the offensive line, this is only our second road game. So typically the Coliseum, it's not that loud. It could definitely get rowdy at times. I don't know what the attendance will be like, but yeah, that's something that I think you're going to have to look out for too, to make sure that we're good on our silent counts and all of that. And so it looks like our guest is here. Just trying to get him on camera now. Great. There we go. How are you, Ron?
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Nice to see you. My name's Shawn. I don't think we've ever met, even virtually. And for those of you who don't know, Ron was Cory's first co-host on here.
Listen, I was his first co-host, and I remember when he came to me with this idea. Because let me let the viewers in on how this grew to this. Is I think like me and Cory, we were in the same year at Penn State, and there were not two people more into Penn State football than us on Twitter. Like we found each other on Twitter, and he's like, I got this idea for this podcast. And he took it from one episode of the podcast to where it is now. Like insane, man. Like I will always just admire him for that, man. It just, and he's still doing it. So I'm glad I could join you guys again.
Yeah, I'm still yelling at people on Twitter too. So nothing's changed in that regard. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Penn State is undefeated. You know, that always helps. The Phillies are losing right now, so we can ignore that. You know, we don't even touch on Philadelphia right now. We can focus on Penn State, which I love, and we're undefeated, man. We're doing great. How you feeling?
I'm doing well, Ron. I'm doing well. I'm glad that we're able to get you back on the pod now. You're with Bleacher Report now. What are you doing over there?
Yeah, I'm over at Bleacher Report as a producer. So I produce live events, some live video for them. Right now, I'm helping produce a podcast with Debo Samuel, like of all people. So I get to work closely with him and align with him on what he wants to talk about every week, and we put it out. So I'm over at Bleacher Report doing some cool things still. I'm still adjusting, but I'm still in the sports world, man. I'm obsessed. I just can't stop.
You were with us with SVP for quite some time. Do you have any good SVP stories for us?
Good SVP stories, man. I have a lot. I have a lot of SVP stories, but like one story I'll always remember with SVP is, I think I asked him, hey, can you look at my 10-team parlay? He has no clue who I am. And I'm like, can you take a look at this 10-team parlay? And he just stopped and he heard it. And he was like, you know what? We'll see. I think one of them is going to hit. And from there, we just grew this relationship that was he really was like a good friend when I was on the show. And he saw something in me while working with him that I was like, okay, man, this guy, he likes me. He thinks we could do this. And he is who you think he is. He's one of the best people I've ever met. Just a genuine dude. Tells it straight. Is the most personable person ever. Would go to war for his guys. Yeah, what you see is what you get. He's a great man, great guy.
And how did you start with him?
Yeah, I started with SVP because when I was at ESPN, I was prompting. So I wasn't making the highlights yet. I was prompting for him. And I made it a point every time I was prompting his show, I just would ask him stuff, pick his brain, about what, just about sports stuff. And I told him I went to Penn State. And of course, I was, as you can imagine, I was a normal Penn State fan at the time. I didn't tell him I went to Penn State too many times. I didn't do that. I did. And so he knew me, and COVID happens. And so they need people to join the show. And, it was hey, where's Ron? And I was like, oh yeah, I will work on your show. Are you kidding me? And I took that, started working with him, started doing bad beats, with him and for him, because I knew that was the segment he liked. And that's really how we got started, man. I just kept bugging him about Penn State. I was like, we're gonna win. This was around I think 2018, that year. That was when that was the 4th and 5. That was that 4th and 5 year. And then we
fun stuff
together. And so that's really it, man. It's Penn State football.
Well, what do you think of Penn State football so far? You feeling pretty good? This is the first true test for them, but how are you feeling about the team so far?
So I feel good. I think that there are holes, but I feel good. It's a talented team. It's a really talented team. So kudos to the recruiting department. And Penn State is probably in that top 5, top 10 rosters. I feel good about them. I think that I would like to see a little bit more consistency and the approach. It feels like they haven't really found an identity yet of who they want to be, but they're a great running team. And we know Drew can pass, and he has command of the offense. I just think that's where they're going to live and die this year, is the offense. It's the offense in the receiving game against those top teams. They're going to run the ball pretty much against anybody, I think, which is surprising. I didn't think that 2 years ago we wouldn't have been saying that. So they're a great running team. I think Drew, to me, has taken the biggest step this year, and he's probably what I like the most about the team this year. Is I feel like he's really just that's his team. That's his team, and he has command of that entire offense. I don't think there's been one game this year where Drew has looked confused or as if he doesn't know what he's gonna do. I think they can beat Ohio State. I'm gonna say that. I think that they can. I think that they can. And as far as this weekend goes, I think that they're gonna beat USC. They're better than USC. USC has all types of stuff going on over there. I don't know if you've seen that. The guys withdrawing and red shirting and they got all types of stuff going on over there. They're not going to beat Penn State if Penn State shows up. So I do think they win this weekend by a touchdown. But going forward, I do think that they are good enough to beat Ohio State in a home game. Even though we know the talent isn't going to be up to Ohio State's level, but we've seen less talented teams battle with those Ohio State teams. We've seen that. That's been the story of Penn State. We're not.
Oh yeah, trust me, we've seen that multiple times.
Yeah, we've seen probably, I would say, consistently. And I get it, the NIL era. They got Caleb Downs and Quinshon Judkins, whatever. But we've seen very talented Ohio State teams, probably the more talented team, against a lesser talented Penn State team for about 6 years now, like 6 or 7 years. And every game, pretty much, we've seen they're going to be in that game. They're going to be in that game. It's just do they have enough playmakers to make plays? And this year, I think they do. Like, Omari Evans looks good. We needed a player that was going to stick out. He looks good, like he can make plays. Liam Clifford can make plays. Tyler Warren.
Let's calm down there.
I know. But, like, they have enough playmakers this year that can make plays on offense that I think going up against any top 5 team, they're going to be in that game. They're going to be in that game and they can win. And I think that's their floor this year. It's obviously, we know we're 10-2, pretty much 10-2 stamped, which I love 10-2. A lot of people don't love 10-2 Penn State. I am enjoying this very much. I like 10-2 and the New Year's 6 every year. That's a good program. But I think they're an 11-1 team this year. That's where I have them, 11-1. And I do think that they can beat Ohio State, and they will beat Ohio State. But I do think one of these teams and one of these landmines will probably get them.
Well,
but I think they're up there.
Let's go through the Big Ten games so we can get your picks before we jump back to the Penn State USC game, because you're already dropping like half of the show on us. Already, you already gave us your prediction when I wasn't even ready for your prediction yet. All right, Northwestern Maryland on Friday. Who you got winning that game, Ron? You freeze up on us, Sean. Who do you have winning that game, Sean?
Northwestern Maryland, right?
Yep.
Maryland. Yeah, I think Western fears the turtle.
Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go.
All right,
Ron,
perfect.
who do you have with the Northwestern Maryland game?
I have Maryland game. They're more talented. I think even Maryland is bound to lose a game like this for some reason. Like, I don't know why every year they lose a game like this, but I could see them losing this game. But I have Maryland. Give me Maryland.
All right. What about Washington at Iowa? Washington coming off that win against Michigan last week. Iowa got trumped by Ohio State last week.
I don't think there's any chance Iowa loses this game.
Wow.
This game. This is the Big Ten. This is a bad Big Ten moment for Washington. Like, Kinnick Stadium, I don't know. I know they went into Michigan and beat them up, or they beat Michigan up, but Kinnick Stadium for the first time, I don't know. It gives me voodoo magic vibes in there on Saturday.
Sean, who do you have winning that game?
Yeah, I'm with you. I got Iowa too. I'm not gonna say there's no chance. But think about Washington just had big time win over Michigan. Seems like letdown city here, playing against Iowa. Kinnick, I'm taking the Hawkeyes. I think that's my double down as well. I believe they're 3.5-point favorites.
3.5. That's about right.
Yeah.
And for the people that are watching on YouTube right now as well, you can do the pick'em. It is in the description below. Or you can just let us know in the comments who you're taking for these games. Wisconsin at Rutgers. Wisconsin rebounded against Purdue pretty well. Rutgers, tough game at Nebraska last week. Who do you have, Ron?
I have Rutgers here. In a little upset pick. You know,
I think they're 2.5 point favorites now.
Yeah, I know. I think they're favored here. I think I have them winning and covering. I think this is like a Rutgers get up game. Like this type of opponent, like they know this is their one chance to get like a big win. I think they're in.
Yeah, if Wisconsin had Van Dyke, I'd probably take Wisconsin, but they do not. So I'm gonna take Rutgers. I like this Rutgers team, and yeah, I think they take care of business on Saturday.
I think it's gonna be very, very close. I honestly don't even know if I would take the cover. I think this could literally be a 1-point game. Wisconsin Rutgers looked just so bad on offense last week, but I think Rutgers does win. But this literally could be 10-7. Like this is going to be really, really low scoring, just awful football.
You know, with Rutgers too. At what point is there pressure on Shiano to fix the offense? I don't think they'll ever fire him, but like you got to do better at some point.
Yeah, well,
right?
their quarterback is a guy who completely just crapped himself in the whiteout game when Minnesota came to town a couple years ago. So, I mean, it wasn't like they had a lot of talent there to begin with. Purdue, probably the worst team in the Big Ten by far, on the road at Illinois. Sean, who do you have in this game?
Illinois, they win big. Purdue's just very, very bad.
Ron?
Illinois is going to beat them up. That one might get ugly.
How about Ohio State at Oregon? This is the NBC primetime game. Potentially could decide one of the potential teams that would make the Big Ten Conference Championship. Who do you have in this one, Ron?
I have Ohio State in this one. I think this is a big game. They get up for big games. I think that Oregon has shown that they have holes, and I think that Oregon, we haven't had like the Oregon game yet this year. And so it's hard for me to pick a team who hasn't had their game yet and expect it to be against a team like Ohio State. So I think I have Ohio State.
Yeah, before the season, I thought Oregon. But Oregon, I'm not saying they're bad or they're not playing that great, but I expected more from them. They just have a lot of moments that they just don't look very good and kind of disjointed. So I'm going to take Ohio State to win this one, even though it is in Eugene. I get it's a tough place to go win a game. But I think Ohio State might, unfortunately, I hate to say it, they may have the best team in the country. So I'm going to take the Buckeyes.
Yeah, they're really good. I feel not as confident in this because I'm going to take Ohio State to win as well, and that's all three of us on this. And I think Dylan Gabriel does have some magic, but I think he's turning the football over just a little too much for me. And that to me is frightening. I don't think you can beat Ohio State if you're turning the football over the way he is. Outson is going to be a zoo, but I think the Buckeyes get the job done. Final game, Ron. Minnesota, you betcha, will be going on the road at UCLA. Obviously, UCLA coming off that loss, potentially found their future quarterback there. And Minnesota beating USC last week. Kind of one of those weird situations where the Penn State, USC, their opponents now play each other from last week, this week. So one of those weird kind of times where that happens in the schedule. Who do you have winning this game, Ron?
Well, first, before I pick, like that quarterback last week, he was good, right? Like I wasn't crazy.
No, he was good.
Yeah, he had a good game.
Like really slinging that pill.
I hope so. I hope Penn State's not bad.
Stop him. I'm like, how is this dude he was making just a perfect read every time. I'm like, all right, but so yeah, I do agree with that, man. I think they might have found their future quarterback, so I hope he plays well. But I don't think they win this game. They a lot of talent. That was like one thing too with them. Like they just don't have any talent, like to make any plays. And so, like, I think Minnesota, this is a spooky spot for them. This is a game they definitely would lose. But I think I'll take Minnesota.
Yeah, I also thought this was a game they could lose, and I'm going to pick them to lose. I'm going to take UCLA here. We've all seen the 1-7 going coast to coast or going over 2 time zones. I think Minnesota, they benefited from it last week. I think they kind of step in the proverbial poop this week, as they have tended to do under PJ Fleck, coming off a big win. I think they come out to UCLA, maybe come out a little groggy. UCLA seemed to have seem to have found some sort of offensive rhythm with the new quarterback. So I'm going to take UCLA to win this one outright.
Sean, I didn't think you were going to do that, but I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking UCLA to win this game and put some respect on Justin Martin's name. I mean, he's beefy. He was quick when he needed to be quick. And I just think Minnesota is going to be coming off of that high of the USC win, and I think they're gonna go on the road in a sleepy environment, and they're gonna struggle. So I think UCLA wins this football game, gets a big win for Deshaun Foster over there. Ron, last thing here in the pick'em, double down game. You get to choose one spread that you like, and you'll get 2 points for it. You can take UCLA to cover the 5.5 or Minnesota to cover the 5.5. Minnesota is the 5.5 point favorite. So UCLA would need to cover that 5.5. Minnesota, or you can go Purdue, Illinois. Illinois is the 18.5 point favorite. Northwestern, Maryland. Maryland is a 10.5 point favorite. Washington, Iowa. Iowa is a 3.5 point favorite. Which game and who would you like to take to cover?
I'm gonna take Illinois in the 18.5.
Wow. Okay.
It's a lot of points, but I just think that they're gonna just overmatch Purdue, and we've seen them be really, really bad. So I think Brett Bielema somehow get me 3 touchdowns this weekend. You're not gonna throw for it, but just pound so you can win by like 20 points.
Sean, which one did you go? You said you went to the Iowa one?
I went Iowa, yeah. 3.5, just not a ton, and they're at home. I feel like that gives you, I mean, with Iowa, not quite a touchdown, but it gives you a field goal.
Yeah, I think I went with, I don't remember, I already did mine, but I'm pretty sure I went with UCLA because I had them to win, so them being a dog, I feel like just made sense there. So I think I went with UCLA 5.5.
Then you're tripling out in an upset, though.
I am, but even then, I think they could honestly lose by 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
I don't see Minnesota scoring a bunch of points out there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
they'll probably lose by 7. But anyway, Ron, we are now finally ready for your prediction. Although you jumped the gun a little bit, can you give us your score and why you think Penn State's going to come away with the win?
I actually didn't give a score, so I am surprised. You did surprise me with this. Score-wise, I think Penn State 31, USC 17. I think they win by multiple scores.
All right, fair enough. Do you have a bold prediction for us?
Bold prediction of the game?
Yeah, and of something Penn State's going to do, or just anything you think is going to be abnormal.
Bold prediction for this game: Nick Singleton has 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns.
Perfect.
I'll even give another bold prediction just because I'm just so sick of this and I want it to happen. But Julian Fleming gets his touchdown.
Wow.
I think
he got close.
Yeah, he got close. That would be the one thing too. But like you asked me earlier, like what do I think of them so far? Like how they can't figure the Fleming thing out. Like what is he on the team? Like is he there? Granted, like I like the way the receiving core has played, but like he's like we have to figure out a way to just get the big free agent acquisition, if you would say, like the ball. Season prediction, I think they go 11-1. That's my bold one. 11-1. It's a little high, but I think that this is an 11-win team.
I think at this point, if Penn State doesn't go 11-1, people are going to be pretty upset. Ron, our 150th show was 2 weeks ago here at Hardcore Penn State Football. Just want again to just say thank you. I mean, I don't know how much I would have podcasted if it wasn't for starting with you back in 2020. So thanks for saying yes way back then, and thanks for coming on the show. Call it 170-ish episodes later. I appreciate it.
Crazy, man. Listen, appreciate you guys. Keep doing what you do. Keep supporting Penn State football, man. For fans like us, man, I'm still here. So keep doing it, man. Proud of you guys. And let's win some games. Let's win some games. Let's beat USC. I need us to beat USC.
Yeah, you're talking a lot. So we definitely need Penn State to win that one now.
To get that monkey off their back. They have to get the Rose Bowl thing off their back. So I think they do it.
Awesome, Ron. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
You too, man.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, Sean. Just you and me again.
Coming up on the moment of truth.
You know, I just will say I do have some PTSD in regards to playing USC. I really do. Like, some of my favorite teams have played USC and just absolutely have crushed my heart and soul.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how many of our listeners did the same thing. I was 5 years old. Played them in the Meadows. Played them at the Meadowlands. At the old Giant Stadium or the kickoff classic, and Penn State just got trounced by USC. And then we play them 8 years later, get trounced again at the Rose Bowl, and then we lose an absolute heartbreaker on New Year's Day 2017. So yeah, there is a monkey to get off our backs. We've actually played USC a decent amount of times throughout our history, relative recent history, last 30, 35 years or so. Penn State, the last regular season game, the last game that wasn't at a neutral site, I should say, Penn State did beat USC, and that was back in 1994 at the Beeve. We actually went up 35-0 at halftime.
It was a good game.
That game.
I'll
take that.
All right, Sean. I don't remember who went first last. Well, you weren't on here last time.
It's not.
But I think I read yours before mine.
All right, so you can go first.
So I'll go first.
And Cory predicted us to lose before the season in this one, so let's see if he sticks to his guns.
Thanks for that reminder, Sean. Appreciate that. Yeah, so as Sean just said, I did take USC to win this game in the preseason. And I think part of why I took Penn State to lose this game was I wasn't sure how Drew Aller was going to be on the road. I didn't know what this offense was going to look like under offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki. I was no idea what the offensive line was going to be able to do with losing 3 starters to the NFL. I think a lot of those questions have been answered. I don't think this is a great offense. I think it's a fun offense that knows what it is and what it isn't and has an identity, which is to be physical and take care of the football and then find their opportunities to take shots. And they're really hoping to be explosive via Nick Singleton 99% of the time. I also think we learned that their offensive line, maybe not as good in pass protecting as they were last year, but as good or maybe even better in run blocking. And I think that goes a long way as far as traveling on the road. And Drew Aller, although the N=1 sample size right now, did look comfortable on the road at West Virginia in a hostile environment, potentially even more hostile than what we may have in the Coliseum on Saturday afternoon. But he definitely has more moxie and composure and a little bit of swag to him. And I think that will also travel on the road a little bit more, us versus the world mentality when you're traveling. Nervous, obviously, about going across the country. And I'm nervous that the Penn State defense is going to be on the field too much. That's probably my biggest concern. At the end of the day, though, I think the running game travels well, and the matchup just favors Penn State too much. It's not one of those games where I'm really worried about the matchup and they're on the road. Like if they're playing at Michigan, I would honestly still be more worried than this game. Penn State's the more physical team, and it's not like it's a slight advantage. It's a large advantage. USC can't stop the run, and Penn State is going to come in here looking to run, not just run a lot, but run effectively and also run for explosive plays. And I think they have just enough talent on the outside to keep the USC defense honest, and they will be able to get after Miller Moss just enough to win this football game. I think it's going to be a great football game. I have Penn State winning 31-24.
All right, I like the prediction. Cory has flip-flopped.
Yes, flip flop. I'll go. Maybe we can get sponsored by some flip flops around here.
All right. So there are things that I'm worried about in this game. That I think were kind of, I think there's an exclamation before the season started. There were some things that I was worried about. Number one, I think back to the Peach Bowl, and now USC is not as good as Ole Miss was last year, but they do a lot of the same things. Built on the passing game. Now they don't have a running back like Judkins, but they do have a good running back. And they get the ball out quick. They have a smart play caller, good quarterback, and we had to travel out there. So there were things that I was worried about, and I'm still worried about because all those things are still true. But as I said earlier in the show, football is still won in the trenches and at the point of attack, and really it's a simple sport, and in that if you could protect your quarterback, and you can make the opposing quarterback if you can make your quarterback comfortable, make the opposing quarterback uncomfortable, you're going to win a lot of football games. You may not win every single football game, but you're going to win a lot. And if you're playing, and that's what Penn State has, and they're going up against a team that doesn't rush the quarterback all that well, that doesn't do a great job protecting the quarterback. So knowing that, I think Penn State does win this game. And I am sticking with my preseason prediction. I actually had 31-24 in my mind, but I am not going to do that anymore. I'm going to change on the fly, and I am going to say Penn State wins 34-24. I'll give us another field goal.
Excellent. Sean, do you have hold on a second. You have a bold prediction, Sean?
Yeah, bold prediction. I'm going to go with Abdul Carter getting 2 sacks.
So we don't talk about this beforehand, but I had my bold prediction to be 5 sacks by the defense.
I could see that.
So we both could be right on a bold prediction together. That's one.
Just fun.
Fun. Yes, I did flip flop, Sean. I just think this team's better than I thought they were before the season started. Just to be frank with you, I mean, I think depth is a concern at linebacker to a certain degree, but I don't think this is the game where that concern is really going to come into play. As long as they can, I guess, play man coverage well enough, or when they do go zone, they're able to cover the running backs. I think they're going to be okay. I don't think this is going to be the game where we're like, man, we really wish we had some better linebackers. I think that probably is going to happen on November 2nd. But
yes.
wanted to just give some shout outs here real quick as we wrap things up. Kent has Penn State winning 30-20. His bold prediction is 3 for 3 on field goals. Ryan Barker will be in his second game starting. Want to give a shout out to Donnie Hartman. He's heading out to USC tomorrow, so safe trip out there for Donnie. And Mark Thomas says the atmosphere in LA at noon is going to be a country club atmosphere. And Lee confirms with me or agrees with me that they have a massive advantage on both sides of the trenches. I did not give a plug during the top of that show, but little love for Hidden Still Spirits, blue and white bourbon. Good bourbon. And a lot of the proceeds from that specific bourbon that Hidden Still Spirits has go straight to Penn State's NIL fund. Large portion of those proceeds go right to Penn State's NIL fund. And I always say, if you don't want to just support NIL for the hell of it, find something that is going to support NIL, and you can kind of be a consumer for that. And bourbon is a great way to do it. Sean, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Let's just win this one. It feels like it's a win that we need to have. Let me ask you this.
Okay. Oh boy.
Do you want Ohio State to win this week?
Yeah, our buddy texted us that earlier this week. I'm very indifferent about it. I really don't care. If they win, great. If they don't, I think we kind of want them to lose, honest. Well, I think we kind of want them to lose.
Why?
I don't think you ever want to have Ohio State win from a recruiting perspective, from a just momentum perspective. Like, I think Ohio State losing, shows that they're beatable and there is a way to beat them. But I don't think you ever want them to win a game. And I understand the idea of you want them to come in maybe undefeated. You know, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but somebody threw out, it could be 1-2 at that point in the season, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah, blah. I get all of that. I just don't think you're ever rooting for anybody to beat or to lose. You know, you don't want anybody to win. This is the way I look at it, against anybody.
So you'd rather Oregon win than
I guess
they're
so.
both in the same conference now. They're both in our conference now.
Yeah, there's no way for both of them to lose, but
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like it's all fun to say, I'm going to root for Ohio State tonight. But when you sit down in front of the TV, are you really rooting for them?
Can't do it. I'll watch it, and I'll be very excited to watch it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great football game, but no.
Yeah, it's a win-win almost in a game like that. Because if they win, you go, well, they're going to be the number 1 or number 2 team in the country when they come into town. And if we do what we're supposed to do, we're going to be a top 2 team, possibly. At least top 3.
It'll be fun. Thank you guys so much for watching on YouTube. We got a record crowd, which I know 20 people wasn't a crazy number for a lot, but for us it is. So shout out to everyone on YouTube tonight. Make sure to like the video and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to the show on podcasts platforms, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. I haven't spoke to you about this yet, Sean, but I was wondering if we could come back on Sunday this week.
Sunday night I could do. I'm coming home from bachelor party on Sunday.
Okay. We'll talk. But anyway, we will be back at some point early next week to recap this football game.
Yes.
For Sean Kane, I am Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Let's see if we can just have the ball go through the hoop. Until then, see y'all later.